Hey guys, it's Matt here, and in this video, we'll be using the iPhone 4S for a week. Before the video begins, I want to address how this video is going to be made. The week I did this challenge, a little something called school happened. I knew that recording clips for this challenge was going to be a pain to do, especially with the workload I was getting from school. So this video will be stylized a bit differently this time around, and I'll be explaining to you how it went this week with very little real-time clips. So to start this challenge off, I needed to replace the battery in this phone. There was no way I was going to use this phone for a week with the original battery being the way it was. So I ordered a replacement battery off of iFixit before I started the challenge to sort that issue out. Little did I know that the amount of time that the battery was going to take to ship was going to be almost 2 weeks long, even though I paid extra for faster shipping. So you can see me replacing the battery here, and it overall went very well. This was my first time ever replacing a battery in any smartphone, so I was a bit nervous in doing such. However, other than me having trouble aligning one of the clips, it went very well, and the phone's battery health was rejuvenated to how it was when the phone was new. I actually had to run out of the house to get to my classes though after I replaced the battery, so before I even finished reassembling the phone, I had to run out and do my classes first. I was at least able to verify the new battery was working before I left, fortunately. Oh, no way. I cannot believe I just did that. So finally, I was able to start the challenge. Unfortunately, I'm unable to use cellular on this phone with carriers removing their support for 3G, and even though 3G isn't dead yet, AT&T at least does not allow new activations on phones that do not fully support 4G. So, starting off with day one, it went really well for me. It wasn't difficult to use the phone for what I needed to use it for. At the time, it wasn't too slow, but it wasn't fast by any means. When it came to apps that I used on the daily, Discord flat out refuses to log in on this phone as iOS 10 or later is required for the app to even work. Snapchat also doesn't log in, and YouTube doesn't work at all unless it's used through the web browser. YouTube is specifically something I want to point out with this phone. Since it had to be used through the web browser, it's not an amazing experience, even though YouTube does its best to make it look like the mobile app. The phone refuses to play anything in the portrait orientation, and it will exit full screen as soon as you start a video if the phone is oriented that way. You are also very limited with video quality options, as you can only watch videos in 360p or 720p. The website will always default 360p as the option for playback, but the 4S does handle 720p very well, though I frequently ran into, well, this. Yeah, this happened on the iPad 2 I was using more often than it did on the 4S, but it still happened on both devices, and it was very, very annoying. Other than those issues though, the phone was, dare I say it, fine. Don't worry though, my opinion's definitely going to change within the next few days. Day 2 was rather uneventful. I ran into some issues that I did the day before, except I ran into another issue. The local grocery store we have here, called Meijer, has free Wi-Fi in the store. Since AT&T had dropped their support for 3G devices, I was actively depending on Wi-Fi to make this challenge work. However, this phone wouldn't render the website to actually agree to the free Wi-Fi terms and get connected. The website would just sit and load endlessly. Other than that issue, day 2 was fine. On to day 3, this would be the first day I'd be at school with this phone on me. They had free Wi-Fi here, which the phone refused to connect to, but I could still access the Wi-Fi since the school had a separate network that students can log on to do their work as long as they know their school account credentials. So I got connected and was able to use my phone online. It was actually very convenient since I could send text and even receive FaceTime audio calls. Day 4 was very similar to day 3, as it was another school day. The class I went to that day allowed for me to use my AirPods to listen to music while I worked, so I tried that. And it actually worked. The AirPods connected through the Bluetooth settings panel, and it worked perfectly fine. I was even able to see the battery level of the AirPods in the notification center of the phone. I was actually kind of surprised how well it worked. When it came to using the streaming apps that I use for music, however, that wasn't easy to do. SoundCloud works perfectly on this phone still, and it's honestly not too bad to use. However, it does take its sweet time when it comes to switching to the next track, and even swiping between tracks can take 5 to 10 seconds each to load, just because the app is just not optimized for this device. Moving on to day 5, it was very uneventful, though something happened that shocked me yet again. For those of you who don't know, which is probably a lot of you because I don't mention this often, I take walks most days of the week. However, I couldn't stream music from my phone for obvious reasons at this point, or so I thought. I decided to sit and wait for a minute next to my house to see how many songs this phone would buffer while I was on my walk. This phone isn't compatible with 5 GHz Wi-Fi networks, so I wasn't getting the full 200 megabit per second speeds that I would usually be getting on my other devices. Even with just a minute of buffering time, the phone was able to load up enough songs to get me through the entire walk without me having to switch to songs stored locally on the phone. I was genuinely amazed to see this, as I was thinking for most of the walk about when it was just going to cut out. It was able to give me more than half an hour of music, and I even got home before the music stopped playing. I never actually found out how many songs I was able to buffer because I got connected to the home Wi-Fi again before I could actually check. So if there's one thing that this phone can do right, it's being able to stream music, even when being away from an internet source. Moving on to day 6, very boring. There wasn't much that happened that day, other than another grocery store trip. Again, it went well, but at this point, the phone's slowness was really getting to me. It was just annoying how much I was waiting for this phone to do very simple tasks. It made me sad how badly this phone was killed with iOS 9, though I'll talk about that more later. Day 7. The last day of the challenge was one of the worst days of using this phone. I used the VLC mobile app to listen to files locally stored on the phone. The app, at least when running on this phone, is extremely unstable. I would bet that I experienced over 30 crashes over the course of this challenge, and one time it completely corrupted my media library and I had to reinstall the entire app to fix it. Also, if you're going to use this app on the 4S, make sure that the option to show album artwork is turned off, because it will crash the app if it is left on. Genuinely, the last compatible version that the iPhone 4 runs is heaps better than what the 4S runs, which is the latest version that exists. And just to sum it all up, here's a clip from that day that I took on the iPhone 4S while I was taking one of my daily walks to show how bad this phone ran. Hey guys, it is the last day and I know I'm doing a different video format this time around, but I do want to give my thoughts just while I'm using the phone for the last day. It's not good. I don't know what I was doing when I thought this was a good idea for a video. This was awful. This week was. So many things went wrong with this phone, and I'm not exactly surprised. This phone's abysmally slow, and now that it doesn't have a working YouTube or Discord app, that's such a pain, because I use that a lot. I use YouTube a lot. The YouTube Studio app works, so that's a plus at least, but it's not good on this phone at all, and ignore the quality. I'm just trying to see how this is with low light. Doesn't look so good on the screen. Otherwise, how well do I think this phone held up? Like, could it still be used? Honestly, I think the iPhone 4 was better than this thing was. And I'm not saying that like as an exaggeration. No, the iPhone 4 is definitely way more usable than this thing is because it's so much faster. This 4S is getting to the point where it can basically do most things that the iPhone 4 can, because while iOS 9 is not as old, it's still old and a lot of services are cutting support for it. So honestly, an iPhone 4 is much faster than this phone is, and that's really bad. I would prefer to use a 4 over this 4S if I had to, because the 4 just runs iOS 7 so much better than this 4S runs 9. If you can get a 4S that runs 7 or even 8, it's going to be better than a 4. With 9, it really is not. That just kind of shows how bad iOS 9 was on this phone, and while I really do love this phone's design, and I love how modern iOS 9 looks in comparison to like the system UI looks very fresh, it looks very modern, looks really nice. It's still iOS 7, even though it's older, it's still, I'd prefer that over this phone any day. Man, I was so happy when the clock turned to midnight to quit using this phone and switch back to my main phone. Finally, the challenge is over and it's time to give my final thoughts on this phone. The iPhone 4S is a beautifully crafted device that was amazing at the time of its release. It was the first iPhone with a dual-core processor, and it was the first iPhone to include Siri, which was honestly amazing to use compared to the iPhone 4's voice control. You can even see the cameras here. I took a few pictures on this, and you can see just how good the cameras can be on this device. That's only in very rare situations. You can see the pictures of the leaves here look really nice. I think I could have done better camera work with this picture here, but the rest of the pictures are not so great. This camera, at least from what I tell, has no optical image stabilization, and most of the pictures that I took were extremely blurry or out of focus, and you can see them here. Moving on from the phone's camera, let's move on to iOS 9. This phone was utterly destroyed by it, and so was every other device with the A5 processor. This chip just isn't powerful enough to run iOS 9 sufficiently on these devices, and the result of that is, well, a phone that was updated too much, making it too slow to use. There's no reason to use a device like this as a daily phone anymore. iOS 9 absolutely murdered this phone, and it was an unjust murder at that. This phone is beautiful, with a glass back and beautiful antenna bands, it grew from the iPhone 4's amazing design. It's such a shame to see it ruined by such a slow operating system. This is why I will forever love the iPhone 4 more than the iPhone 4S. One reason being how slow 9 is on the 4S, but another being iOS 9 doesn't have anything significant about it. It's not new, it didn't introduce anything groundbreaking, it's not a very important operating system, at least in my opinion. iOS 7 was, and that's what the iPhone 4 is stuck with. iOS 7 was an operating system that changed everything. It added new features, it radically changed the design, and most importantly, it showed the new path that Apple was taking with iOS. The iPhone 4 runs an OS that was a massive staple in Apple's history, and will forever make it the better of the two phones for me. Even though the iPhone 4 didn't run iOS 7 perfectly, and a lot of features were left out of this phone for newer ones, it was significant. People weren't mad when iOS 7.0 was slow on their iPhone 4s, as the update was such a big overhaul that I feel that people didn't mind as much. They were happy that their old phone could even run iOS 7 at all. At least with that, Apple actually improved the performance in iOS 7.1 and made the 4 so much more usable, which they failed to do with iOS 9.1, 9.2, or even 9.3 on the iPhone 4S. This challenge taught me how Apple brutally destroyed the iPhone 4S and how too many software updates can really be a bad thing. The 4S will always be remembered as the phone that Apple destroyed, and I'm sad about that. The 4S genuinely was better than the iPhone 4 was, and if it had gotten cut on iOS 8 rather than 9, I think it would have been way more usable even nowadays. So, that's about it for this video. If you liked it, then hit the like button and get subscribed if you like the content that you see on this channel. I did quite a bit of different things today when it came to this video. I rarely ever do videos that are scripted. This one is mostly scripted. Barely ever really rely on B-roll for stuff. So, if you guys like this format, then leave a comment down below, tell me that I should continue doing this. If you don't like it so much, then you can also leave a comment saying that I should do the more casual kind of videos that I usually do, which I'm still planning on doing those anyways, just because that's easier for me and it fits my style a little bit better. So that's about it for this video though. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys all later. Bye.